the original Season 4, Episode 5, I Hear You Knocking. Really enjoyed this episode. We get to see, even though it's not exactly new, but, kind of Marcel versus Klaus by the end of it. And the way that they end up fighting each other in this episode is what makes it so unique. So we have the Hallow manipulating both of them. It starts off with Klaus, where of course he's seeing his insane, father of a human being, or former human being, and we start off with the flashback, which I actually thought was kind of cool. We see an old flashback of him as a child where he kind of just hears a battle going off, and he sees this person who's wounded who asks for help from just, this random young child. And so then his father comes along and he gives him one of his angry man speeches, and the Hallow decides to use that because Michael has always been Klaus's greatest issue, greatest fear in life was his father. So they use that against him, or the Hallow uses it against him, his own father. And I like the way it was playing out. It's like, you're being manipulated, and it even kind of admits fairly early on in the episode, I think it was like the second time Klaus actually encounters the Hallow. The Hollow's just like, I'm not actually here. You're just seeing things. And that was pretty much it. It was like, yeah, it's just me. I'm not a ghost or anything. It's just me, messing with you. And it was kind of straightforward. It was just like, yes. It was manipulating both Klaus and Marcel, but it was fairly straightforward, where it was like, yeah, you're imagining things. And we actually find out that that's happening at first. It's pretty obvious that it's happening with Klaus, but then we get to see it with Marcel, where at first he sees Elijah. And as soon as it happened, I was like, okay, maybe this isn't Elijah, because that was before the actual reveal that, it's manipulating them. It was very obvious, of course, because, one of the characters is dead. Michael was actually dead. So when it was Elijah, there's a bit of mystery to it, but I was like, yeah, I'm going to assume that this is actually the Hallow. And that's what it turns out to be. And it's both Elijah and Klaus for a little bit, and then it goes back to just Elijah by the end of the episode for Marcel. But it was really good. And that's where they introduced the idea that the Hallow can take the place of people that are actually there, because Marcel ends up choking the girl that he's kind of involved with right now, and I can't think of her name. But he ends up choking her, and she's like, hey, it's me. And he's like, oh, crap, he could have potentially killed her because he didn't realize that that's how it was. So that introduced something, and then that's what kind of freaked me out later when Klaus kind of just got fed up and was like, all right, whatever. And so he starts, killing this image of his father over and over, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure these are going to end up being people. And, of course, that's what ends up happening, and, just the way it played out I thought was pretty cool, and how the Hallow manipulated him, and it was like, hey, maybe, if you do this sort of thing, I might make you end up killing someone you love. Or maybe I already have. And then the woman ends up turning into Freya, which I figured that was going to be fake, because I'm like, that would just be a really effed up way to kill off a character, so I was kind of hoping, but I was like, that's probably not going to actually be Freya. And of course it's not. And so the Hollow's like, see, next time it could be her, or it could be your daughter, or just anyone that you actually love. So I thought that was actually a really cool dynamic, at least for this episode. We'll see if it comes back, because seemingly it's banished by the end, because even Freya says, I don't sense any traces of the Hallow on either you or Marcel. So I don't think we'll get to see that, at least not from those characters. We might see it from other people that end up getting manipulated in future episodes, but I thought that was actually a really cool mechanic, where it'll be visions of people, like their worst nightmare or something like that, but it can literally take the place of actual humans in the real world, where the person being manipulated or tortured by the Hallow won't realize they just ran through their mother or something insane like that, like they just killed a kid or something crazy. So I thought that was an interesting concept that they kind of introduced, and it seems like it's gone, but I'm like, I don't know, it's the new big villain for the season. This could easily happen to anyone else, and we just get to see how that plays out. So I hope that that does happen, to be totally honest, because I think that's a really good concept, and that's something that they could utilize, and maybe it won't lead to one of the main character deaths, but it could be a side character that's fairly important. It could just lead to, just a crazy battle where it's intense, where it's like, hey, you're going crazy, but maybe they don't get snapped out of it, or whoever it may be that's getting manipulated. So I feel like that's something they could do. If it were to happen to anyone, I think it would be I don't know, probably Freya's new friend, which I thought was interesting how they did that. What is her name? Keelan. Keelan is her name. So if it would happen to anyone and it would cause that person to die, I would say it's her, because she hasn't been fully put in as a main character, or possibly Haley's pseudo mother at this point. So I'm like, those are the two characters where I'm like, they're important, it's very obvious, but both of them could end up being killed or manipulated into killing someone else or trying to kill someone else, because pretty much everyone's powerful in both those characters. Um, so I feel like if anyone could get killed off because of the Hallow taking over them, it would be one of those two characters, because everyone else, I think, is just like way too important. They're too high up there. But it was an interesting concept, so I do hope we get to see it come back. We do get, kind of a little clue as to what the Hallow is. Once again, like a little hint, not even really what it is, just how it's actually been around for a while, because Haley does get some answers as to what may or may not have happened to her parents from her kind of new, mother figure. And it's like, man, that, this entity or whatever it is may have caused your husband to kill my parents in the past. And I was like, wow, that's a crazy tie-in for them to make, but I thought it was actually kind of cool. So I thought that was nice, but they get some more answers, so now kind of everyone realizes what's going on. It's like there's this ancient evil that's happening. Vincent knew about it, so that's kind of Marcel's side of things, and now the original side of things, they have someone that's kind of tied into it as well. So I enjoyed that. The other big story for this episode is Freya and her relationship, or well, it's not really about her relationship, that seems to be something they're introducing, but mostly it's about her trying to save Klaus over Marcel. And I was like, man, just the way the season has gone, it's so interesting to watch her really not give a crap about Marcel. It's like, everything was kind of cool last season somewhat until the end, but it is 100% like, I want my brother, I do not care about Marcel. So I just found that very interesting, kind of hearing her constantly say stuff like, if it's got to be Marcel or you, don't let it be you. So she's going through trying to figure out this magic and stuff like that, and I just said it, but I sort of, just the way it is, it's like, Keelan, I believe Keelan, I hope that's the name. But she decides to stick around, which I figured she would, because I mentioned that before. Like, she kind of has to stay with them, because even with the ring, from the last episode, like, yeah, sure, she can control her powers, but there's still, like, who knows how many people are trying to find her and kill her. So I'm not surprised, even though she said it was just like, you kind of saved my life and stuff. And she does kind of throw it in there a little bit, that everyone's chasing her down, so she was kidnapped, but Freya mentions, like, that's what saved you too. So it's like, it's in there. Or she may not have mentioned it, but it was thrown in there, like, that's kind of what saved you. And so she kind of has to stick around anyway. I was surprised, like, it would have been so dangerous for her to take off. But she's like, hey, I'll stick around and help you out. And, she's like, that's what friends are for. And they never did it. That's why, because I never thought anything of it. I just thought, like, this would be cool. They might actually end up becoming friends. And then at the end of this episode, they're kind of joking around. And as soon as the music started playing, I'm like, this is some very specific music that I feel like may or may not lead to some possible coupling in the future. And I'm like, all right, it could just, it may or may not happen, but it's Freya, like, reflecting on what happened in the episode, and she's kind of a little bit down in the dumps, because it's like, man, this could have ended really, really badly if, it hadn't, randomly changed at the last second. Like, this could have been really, really bad. So she's kind of down in the dumps, and, we have her like, reflecting and sitting on the bed, and Keelan is just kind of, she's walking around. I was like, she's slowly walking, and she may or may not sit down, because I was like, if she sits down, something's going to happen here. And of course, she sits down, and then she kind of makes a joke with her where she nudges her, and she puts her hand on Freya's knee for like a quick second, and then they cut, and then her hand was on her own knee. And I was like, okay. They look at each other, and then they look away, and then it cuts. And I'm like, okay, they're clearly hinting that they will end up in a relationship in the future, or at least get close to it with this show. One or both of them could die. You just never know. I doubt Freya would die, but once again, just certain characters have certain levels of importance. But I was like, okay. Didn't expect that, if I'm being totally honest. I thought for sure that it would just be they end up as good friends, because that is something that they've never done with Freya. Which like really touched on her sexuality. So she could be lesbian, she could be bisexual. She's from like a super long time ago, and she wakes up it was every 100 years or something crazy like that. So not a lot of time to really explore who she does and doesn't like. She could, it's probably not really in her head too often when it comes to, oh, look at my whole family constantly causing chaos for everyone else as well as themselves. So she's kind of got a full plate all the time. She doesn't have much time for relationship stuff. So I think that should be an interesting element to this season, kind of putting the two of these characters together and just seeing how that plays out. It seems like it could be really cool. I kind of wanted them to just be friends, if I'm being totally honest, because I just thought that would be cool. We don't have that in this show, like not anymore at least. We kind of had it with Davina when she like kind of came into play, and Davina and Josh, but they weren't shown as often in this series. And Josh, and Davina, they got a bit more important as things went on, but we never got to see them together enough. I felt because they were the only characters where it was really like buddy buddy, and I kind of wanted that with Freya and Keelan. And maybe we could have that if they're together, but whenever it's a relationship thing in this type of show, it's super dangerous because they've always got enemies. So it's like, man, I kind of wish they were just friends, and it wouldn't be as dangerous, and like, oh, they could be buddy buddy, and I wouldn't be as freaked out. But whenever anyone ends up in a relationship, it even happened with Josh in the last thing. That was like exactly the perfect example. Whenever someone gets in a relationship, even if it's a side character, there's some bad element to the story that's just rolling around. It's like, oh, look who's in love. One of those people have got to go. So I feel like that's where we're headed instantly. That may just me being super pessimistic, but this and the Vampire Diaries after 8 years, that's just all I think. I'm just like, that's just not going to end well, because it never works for anybody when they do relationships outside of the originals, because they're absolutely immortal, and that's really it. That, like, honestly, that is like really all I can think of. Yeah, that's literally it. Even through 8 years of the Vampire Diaries, that's it. That's all I can think of as far as relationships that have legitimately worked out fine and just, yay, this is good. Maybe there's like one other one, technically. So I won't talk too much about that just in case. It's still fairly recent finale. But it just doesn't work for the most part. So I'm like, it makes me worried. I don't care if they're together, but I'm just like, man, if they're friends, I always feel like friends are safer than lovers. And that's honestly how it works in this series, in both series. So I'm just like, all right, as long as they live, it's cool. But I'm just like, every time somebody gets close to somebody else, even like with Josh, even if it's a side character, something dramatic has got to happen, and it just cannot work. And it's like, man, I hope that doesn't end up happening, especially since they just introduced Keelan. I don't, that's kind of what makes me think like maybe it could still work, because they just introduced her. The fact that she was being hunted, I feel like, is something that they barely even touched on, just her being like the last of her pack. That's something they could definitely jump into further if they wanted to, and kind of bring in the werewolf stuff a little bit more, since it's definitely taking it backstage to like, crazy original stuff going on, plus this new super ancient, super dark magic evil thing happening. So I feel like they could touch on that, and they've only like really nipped at it a little bit. So I feel like she might be safe, at least for a super long time. But honestly, it's just the relationship thing instantly has me worried. Like, they just don't let people have relationships in these shows. They always kill them at some point. It never ceases to happen. So that's what has me worried. That's honestly why I want them to be friends more than anything, because I'm like, I don't know. Once they kiss, somebody's got to die. That's just the way it works in this show. Maybe it won't happen this time, and we'll get to see them legitimately be happy. That would be great. Plus, we'd have another werewolf as a permanent character, and I just think that would be a cool element to the show, because of her unique ability. She doesn't have the same healing, as, like an original, because all the vampires at this point are basically originals for the most part. So anytime somebody dies, it's one of the originals or someone who has the power of an original, or it could be a vampire that gets the next snap, because we, how that works. So it's like everyone always comes back, but she wouldn't come back from that. Next snap would kill her. Having like just a random piece of wood stabbed into her heart would kill her, just like a normal vampire or normal human. So there's just so many elements to it. She doesn't even want to use her powers. That's another huge element of her character, where it's like they could really dive into that. Just as far as development, I think that would be pretty cool. Like why she chose to go against it after all this time. Maybe like how she even activated her powers, how that felt, considering how she wants to like have nothing to do with being a werewolf. I would love to know what happened to actually activate her power in the first place. Like, how the heck did that happen for this type of character that hates it so much to even use her abilities simply to heal? That sort of thing. So it's like, man, I would love to learn more about her, and I'm sure we will. I just hope that after all that learning, we don't end up losing her by the end of this season. That's like my main thing. I am legitimately worried about that. But moving on to the rest of the actual episode, we get to the end, everything kind of works out fine, and we find out that the woman working with Marcel actually had a plan with the magician that she hired, or the witch. I don't know why I called him a magician. The witch that she hired, she actually had a plan with him to flat out kill Klaus. That's her whole thing. She wants revenge for that. Everyone wants revenge against Klaus, so that's just easy. But they find out that Marcel having been stabbed and his blood dropping still counted as a small sacrifice. The Hallow didn't end up taking either Klaus or Marcel's power, which was like the whole point of having them kill each other. It would like absorb all of their abilities. So that doesn't end up happening, but this blood sacrifice comes, and they get this itty bitty little thorn on this vine, and the guy's like, this thorn can kill an original, which is insane. I can't wait to see how they fashion this tiny little thorn into like the tip of a knife or something. So that's what they have right now, and of course it's not going to work. We know that they are not going to kill an original, but the threat is now there, and that is something that they kind of reference early on in the episode where Klaus is like, I don't fear you. Like, you can hurt me, but I don't fear you. There's nothing that can kill me. The White Oak is gone. I've got nothing. We find out that Marcel actually does have a weapon now that can kill him. So Freya has the blade, which I just want to say this in general. I always forget stuff, so they may have mentioned that somewhere before, but they definitely didn't mention it in this season. So that was something that was shown as brand new. So I was like, all right, that's cool. Marcel has a weapon against him. I'm pretty sure they never showed that because that would have been a big contender in the season finale or anything where it's like, oh, we actually do have a weapon against Marcel. They had nothing. So I'm assuming this is like brand new, something she's been working on for the past 5 years. So that's something that's introduced that can actually kill Marcel. So he's got a threat now. And now we have this small thorn, which may or may, maybe the vine will actually continue to grow because it was growing super fast and it's magic. So they could easily make it where it grows to multiple thorns or something. And they basically make a different version. It won't be like white oak, but it'll be, something else, like vine ash or whatever. So it's like, all right, they have a new weapon to use against all the originals. We see that there's a new weapon against Marcel. Everyone can die now, so they kind of, elevated the threat levels once again for all the main characters, which is good. It's just, a sense of urgency, even though I'm sure nobody's going to die. It still kind of at least elevates that, like, fake tension where it's like, they could die, though. So, even though I still think all the main characters will live, there's still potential. So, it's going to be nice to see how they kind of keep things going. And we do see, like, a small figure in this episode of the Hallow. There is, I mentioned before, will they have a manifestation or will it just be the blue lights? And for the most part, it's all the blue lights until that last scene in the house where Freya throws the bottle, and it's like a person in a cloak. And so we see like some really bony fingers, actually kind of like mine, just like long bony fingers. And we see you kind of the typical greenish kind of glowing eyes, and it looks like someone's just in a long black coat or cloak. So I'm like, all right, we may or may not see a full representation in the future, but we saw a partial representation this time around. So I think we will end up getting a character that becomes the full physical manifestation of the Hallow at some point in this season. But of course, for now, it'll still be the cool blue lights with, just making random dragon circle symbols around town. But, excuse me, enjoyed this episode for sure. Love the tension in it. By the end, Marcel, of course, is captured. Like I said, there are weapons everywhere to kill everyone. We don't really know officially what this woman wants revenge for. She doesn't exactly explain it, but probably Klaus killed somebody she loved. That is really easy to make. That's kind of all he does, so that's probably what it is. She wants revenge, he killed somebody. That's it. It would be interesting if he just flat out turned her, and he didn't, it was like, we find out she's like centuries and centuries old, maybe even older than Marcel. That would actually be kind of cool if that was the reveal, where it was like she's so old that she's like one of the earliest ones that was actually turned. Obviously she couldn't be one like the first one because they already did that, but one of the earliest ones. I think that would actually be kind of cool, where she's like, yeah, I'm so old. This is from like, old England type stuff. He killed my family. I just never forgot, and I want this dude dead. So we still have to find out exactly why her backstory is relevant and important, because I'm sure they'll explain that to us in the future. But ultimately, I enjoyed this episode. We've got weapons to kill everybody. The Hallow is still kind of growing as its own thing. Like I said, I hope we get to see this sort of manipulation element come back for other characters, where they see, their greatest fears and things like that. I personally think that would be a really cool way to do maybe the death of a character, where, like I said, they can't control it, they don't get snapped out of it, and someone does have to kill someone else. But I think a lot of good went down in this episode. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, or least favorite parts. And I definitely want to know where you guys think things are headed now that there are weapons to kill all of the original level characters. So Klaus can be killed, Marcel can be killed, all of the originals can die. Freya, of course, is, basically human. She's a witch, so she can. I feel like that's the funny thing. I always felt like witches, oddly enough, could defend themselves better than anybody else because it's like, well, you know, they don't even, people don't even get near witches. It's like, I don't want you 10 feet within me, so boom, shield. I always felt like witches were the most protected, oddly enough. Although you wouldn't think that with Bonnie Bennett, like she's died 1,800 times in the Vampire Diaries. But really would love to know where you guys think things are headed now that there is kind of an even playing field. Everyone can be killed off. Do you legitimately think someone might actually die? Temporary, that's definitely an easy way to do it. A temporary death, that's very common for them. But we'd love to know where you think that's headed. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.